For this video, we're going to be making a pretty unique dog ramp. My wife and I wanted to find a way for our dogs to get in and out of bed safely, being they're small dogs and our bed sits up higher than most. Our smallest dog just turned 8 and has some back problems, so we wanted to make this as low impact as possible. So because of this, we didn't want stairs, we wanted a ramp. Now unfortunately with smaller dogs, a ramp you need to have a lower incline than you would if you had a large dog, so that was going to make this ramp larger. The big concerns there are that, first off, we really didn't have the room for it, and secondly, our entire bed is surrounded by either drawers or cabinets for storage, and we didn't want to block that with a ramp. Another thing is, I didn't want to be walking across the room in the middle of the night and stub my toe or have it in the way so I could kick it or knock it over. So I designed this ramp to wrap behind her nightstand. It'd be out of the way so we wouldn't have risk of kicking it. It wouldn't block any storage at all. And it wouldn't have to run the entire length of the bed in order to have a low incline.
Years ago, I was gifted some oak that was from an old piece of furniture. The wood at one point was very nice, however at this stage there were a lot of nail holes, knots, and some pieces were pretty warped. I'm hoping I have enough for this project that I can salvage, so step 1 will be milling this down to a uniform thickness, and then I'll cut the pieces to the proper dimensions. These boards range anywhere from 1 1/16 inch to up to 2.5 to 3 inches thick, those of which I'll rip in half. I could bring these clear down to 3/4 inch like normal, but I decided instead to leave them actually at 1 inch thick versus wasting the extra wood. It's going to be overkill for my sized dogs, and it'll weigh much more than it actually needs to, but it will be very sturdy. So to start, I made a quick planer sled for the warped boards to get a flat top surface. To cut these in half, I'd recommend using a bandsaw. However, I only have a small benchtop one that has a questionable fence and a much thinner blade than ideal for resawing. Because of this, I use a table saw and just ran it through on multiple passes. Next was to clean up all the pieces prior to cutting them to length, which is a bit backwards than normal. Since I'm an idiot and used a 90-tooth blade to rip down 1 inch thick pieces of oak on an underpowered table saw, not only did I overheat the motor once, I also left burn marks all over the wood. So step 1 was to clean up those burn marks while removing as little wood as possible. To do so, I chose to use these sanding discs. This made for easy, quick work that left the pieces perfectly square. Afterwards, I just needed to do a light sanding to remove any swirl marks, and those were a lot easier to remove than the burn marks would have been, and I was good to go. Since this project has a lot of the pieces that have weird angles on the ends, it would have made them much more difficult to use a push stick or run them through the table saw this way. So that's why I decided to sand the edges first, and then cut to final length after.
This next cut, I rigged something together in order to get the proper angle I needed. Full disclaimer, I have no idea if this cut is considered safe in the community, so please leave in the comments below if you think it is or is not. It'd help everybody out here. I personally felt safe. I was holding the one end, it was clamped in the middle, and then the far end was up against the fence. There was no movement in it, so I felt perfectly safe. But even with that said, don't try this at home. I always wanted to say that.
Since this project had a ton of pieces that I could easily get mixed up, I decided to print off labels and mark them on the end. This would not only be easier to read, it would also be quicker to remove during glue up rather than having to sand off the pencil. Next will be to cut the dado slots for the platform for the ramp itself. These will be cut a little wide as I also want to hide the edges of the matting I'm going to use to slide in here.
So a bit of a change of plan here. My wife has concerns as far as her being able to reach her nightstand, since this will push her nightstand further away from the bed. Because of that, and I have longer arms, we're going to move it to my side of the bed. This really raises two issues. The first concern was that because it was going to my side of the bed, it would need to be a mirror image of what I originally modeled. I didn't want to take the time to redesign it and remodel it, so I was going to do my best to not make a mistake and just make everything the opposite direction. And then secondly, it was going to cover a floor vent on my side of the room. So I have a few ideas, but I think I'll be able to throw some ductwork underneath it and actually have it blow out the side. So it shouldn't be an issue, but it could down the road. We'll see what happens.
Now it's time for assembly, and lots of it. My goal was to hide every fastener in this project if possible. Here I put a pocket hole in the track for extra strength, being sure to use shorter screws in this hole so they don't come out the other end. This is where I made my only mistake, not remembering to flip the sides since we moved it to my side of the bed. I drilled the pocket holes on the wrong side and didn't have enough leftover pieces of wood to make another one. And wouldn't you figure, is one of the front pieces as well. Some of these angles and joints got a bit tricky, but it's very satisfying when they all came together and lined up perfectly.
Next, we need to cut the main platform down. I had some spare 3/4 inch plywood from a previous project. I'm just gonna go ahead and use that. At the end, you'll never actually see this, so I care more about strength than I do how it looks currently.
Similar to the side pieces, nothing I will have will cut this steep of an angle safely. So I decided to make a jig to get this to work. I had to be able to cut this board standing up on the table saw, so this is what I came up with. It was quick, simple, made from scrap wood, and was very safe. Now it's time to assemble everything. The top slides into the dados, and I will attach that with wood glue and pin nails just to hold it in place while the glue sets. I used shims to make sure the board sat at the bottom of the dado, so I had room for the matting later on at the top.
I learned 2 valuable lessons today. The first one is I'm going to be in between the project and the camera. I need to make sure I have my belt tightened enough or that I have a long enough shirt that my underwear doesn't show. And second, I need to be really on point with these joints when I'm gluing them up, making sure I'm getting all the excess glue off before it dries. It's very, very hard and tedious to get into some of these nooks and crannies to get the excess glue off. It's really tricky to get in there with a chisel or a sander to get that out of there. With that said, it's time to sand. A lot. After wiping it down with a tack cloth, it's time to stain. We chose to go with a very dark stain. One, it would hide the blemishes and the mistake I made on the front as much as possible. And second, our furniture up there is already pretty dark, so we wanted something somewhat close to that. I had never used gel stain before, or black stain for that matter, but on the test pieces that I used, 2 coats, not left on too terribly long, gave a nice brown color, which is what I was going for. I just need to be careful not to leave it on too long. Hey, no. It's not ready yet. They're so impatient.
So unfortunately, I didn't take my own advice once again, and I left the stain on for a little bit too long, and in some spots it came out almost black. It's not quite as dark as the camera makes it look, and the grain still pops out more in person, but it is a lot darker than I had planned. Lesson learned, I guess. The nice thing is it will still match the black matte, which we'll use for the main surface. After a couple coats of wipe-on poly, it was time to cut down the matte. I wanted this to have the ribs going horizontally the whole way up, so the dogs would have traction when they walked up the ramp. This made the turns a bit tricky to make the lines all match up, but I was really happy how it turned out.
I decided, since we're running ducting through this, to put panels on the front so you can't see it, and it'll make the grill look nicer on the front of the ductwork. So we're going to make those real quick, assemble the ductwork. One key thing, because I have to use a coupler in there with the ductwork, I'm going to tape all of the seams because a few of the pipes are going the wrong direction, and I don't want to have any leaks in airflow. So that's going to do it for this project, and I love how it turned out. Outside of the color, it turned out even better than I thought it was going to. It's out of the way, it doesn't block any storage, and more importantly, 2 of the 3 dogs use it all the time. The biggest just skips it and jumps right into bed, but the 2 smaller ones we were concerned about use it all the time. Looking back, the only 2 things I'd really change about this project were the 2 mistakes that I made. It wasn't really a planning issue. It was staining it too dark by leaving it on too long, which I could have used a preconditioner on the wood, and that may have helped set up time in order to get the stain off and not penetrate quite as much. And then secondly, not messing up that one front piece, but luckily for me, it's hidden by the nightstand, so you really can't see it anyway. Other ideas I had were to add a railing at the top or a gate of some sort. One that would allow them to not fall off, and 2, I could swing it to where it would block them from getting back on the ramp once we were in bed, so the little one couldn't go down and mark my dirty clothes as his own, if you will. But as it turns out, they're not on it long enough, and they don't really get that close to the edge, so that's not really a concern for us anymore. And because my pillow is right where they jump on and off, if they try and get off the ramp, it's going to wake me up anyway. So we decided to bypass that altogether, but that is something you could add if it was a concern for you. I had also thought about if that top platform wasn't sturdy enough to actually clamp it to the side of the bed. However, I think because of the 3/4 inch plywood and the 1-inch boards, it's more than strong enough for my small dogs, and it'd probably support a mid-sized dog as well. So that's going to wrap this one up. If you like what you saw or learned something new, be sure to like the video. If you're new here and you want to see more content like this, check out the other videos on my channel, and make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified when new videos come out. I'll have a second video coming out in July since I didn't get one posted in June. I unfortunately got way behind because of my bathroom project in the basement. That, shocker, took a lot longer than I had planned. However, I'm very, very happy how it turned out. If you want to see before and after pictures of that, I have it posted on my Instagram. Thank you to my Patreons. I really appreciate all your support. It really helps the channel out and make future content even better. And a special call out to my gold members here. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.